Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Welcome to episode 16 of Conversations to Have with Your Advisor. Today we are going to be talking about real estate purchase. I think buying our dream home or a piece of land or owning real estate is like a goal for most of us at some point in our career. And a lot of times, people don't plan sufficiently for this and tend to do misallocation of capital. And the cost of this misallocation can actually be felt over the next few decades. So today, let's deep dive into what are the things that you need to consider before making this decision, and what are the mistakes that we have seen in our experience that we can share with you for people to avoid making.
I think this is an interesting conversation because a lot of people do look at buying a house during the festive period, and Diwali is also the time for new beginnings. So the question that naturally pops up into somebody's mind is, okay, I know I want to own a house, but the real question is, when should I buy this house, right? Is it when my portfolio is a particular size, or when I reach a particular age, which actually seems to tip a lot of investors into that house buying frenzy. When we think about when to buy a house, I think one framework that you can apply is to look at your human versus financial capital. And the basic idea being your human capital is your own potential, which tends to be much higher when you're younger because you have your entire career ahead of you. There's a lot that you can do with your time and your energy. And as you move later and further into your career, that diminishes a little bit. But at the same time, while that is reducing, what is actually increasing is your financial capital. So your, let's say your starting salary when you're someone in your 20s versus how you're earning, say, 15, 20 years into your career in your 40s, you're going to see a vast difference between these two salaries, right? But you're actually just the same person at both points in time. So your financial capital actually increases because of the income that you earn, your the savings that you built over a few decades. So all of this matters. So when we look at when you should actually slot that purchase of a house into your life goals, I think you need to have your human and financial capital in better balance. You don't want to be doing this at the start of your career when you don't have adequate financial resources. You also don't want to put that financial strain on yourself when at the last point of your career where you've got probably many other goals that are coming together at that point, including retirement or providing for the next generation or even the generation before you. So bringing those things into balance actually makes a huge difference. So that midpoint can actually vary quite a bit for people. So for some people, it might happen in their mid-30s. For some people, it might happen only in their 40s. So it's not really so much about when you hit a particular age, it's also about which life stage you are in and where you are in terms of your human and financial capital balance.
So apart from the timeline, there are quite a few things for us to be mindful of when it comes to planning a real estate purchase. Let's just go over what these are. So the first thing is planning for the goal. So ensure that you at least give yourself around like 5 to 10 years for you to be able to achieve the growth in your financial assets that will be helping you in funding your house purchase goal. You also need to be considering whether how much of a down payment, what kind of a loan amount that you would like to go for, and also see how your asset allocation might change during this period of time when you go for that kind of a real estate purchase. So give yourself almost like 5 to 10 years much ahead before you actually make the purchase. Also, the second is setting the goal amount. Now, a lot of people tend to take into account only what the property value or the land value might be. But a lot comes into play when you have to actually construct the property, right? So you need to look at in terms of the additional costs that you will be incurring. So this could be like furniture, interiors, even the construction as such. And obviously, given that it's your dream house, you want to not be cutting corners here, and you want to have that flexibility to be able to build it the way that you would like. So ensure that the amount that you have in mind includes all this, or be prepared for even probably for you to overshoot your budget a little bit and plan accordingly much in advance so that it doesn't come as a surprise in the last minute. If you're looking to go ahead and finance your property, then you need to be like considering into fact about how your credit score is looking. So actively look at building a good credit score. You could look at opting for suitable credit cards, ensuring that your credit card payments are on time. You could also think about probably opting for a car loan closer to say 3-4 years to your house goal, and ensure that you are having like timely payments, so that you build up a good credit score and you'll be able to work with the bank in a better manner in terms of going forward with your home loan. Lastly, you need to be considering about the legal documentation and the process that's associated with it, and also probably certain costs that might come under this. So this includes ensuring that there is clear documentation and title. You could go ahead and work with a lawyer if required to ensure that these things are perfect before getting into any kind of a real estate purchase. And lastly, you need to be considering about insurance. Now, insurance comes in multiple factors. So this could be the home insurance that you want to take for your house. This could also be in terms of like your human life value. Obviously, if you are going to be opting for a loan, then there will be a revision to your human life value. So you need to be checking whether you're sufficiently insured, if you need to top up, and accordingly make arrangements for those as well.
Those are a lot of really great inputs that you gave, Rashmika. So let's just look at a couple of things in terms of what are some mistakes that we can avoid when we're making this really big and important decision in our lives. I think one thing that often gets left out is, you did touch upon like planning for a loan, but I think many times what tends to happen is that people don't think about this as something that they need to plan for. It just is something that they take for granted, that you will have a loan that is sanctioned to you. But there are like some finer details that when we pay attention to, we can actually optimize that journey. So the first and obvious thing is to decide how much you want to use as finance in terms of like a loan, and how much you're going to put in from your savings, which is your debt to equity. You did talk about how your asset allocation is going to change. So a higher level of finance is obviously going to have a lower disruption on your asset allocation, but it also means that you have a higher loan burden that you have to carry. So these are some trade-offs that we need to measure and see how it works out in each case. There is no right or wrong way to do this. The second thing that you want to look at is, what is the tenor of the loan? So we did talk about being in that nice balance and sweet spot in terms of your human and financial capital. So when you're deciding your loan tenor as well, you want to make sure that you're at a comfortable timeline where you're paying a reasonable EMI, but it's not eating into your capacity to save. It's not going to coincide directly or extend beyond your retirement timeline, right? The third thing that you can do is to understand where you are in the interest rate cycle, because this could again influence your decision as to whether you want to take a fixed interest rate loan or a floating rate loan. And when you're looking at these fixed versus floating rate loans, you also want to keep in mind that it's easier to prepay a floating rate loan without any penalties than it is to pay a fixed interest loan. So keeping all of these things in mind as far as our debt or loan management is concerned is one important mistake that we can avoid. The second thing that we see, which is quite common when it comes to purchasing a property, is that many people look at this goal in isolation and not in the larger framework of their entire financial plan and their financial responsibilities. So what tends to happen is, when we are chasing this dream home, we tend to forget that many things are going to crop up in that same timeline. So when you have a home loan that's running for 20 years, you're also looking at a time frame where you're going to be providing for your children to go to college, or setting them up for later in life. You're going to look at your own career path that might change. You might move from being an employee to an entrepreneur. You would also look at things like retirement, medical emergencies. All of this is going to happen in that 20-year timeline. So when we look at only the house goal, what tends to happen is we provide for the house and we have that in place, but all of these other goals, we end up making trade-offs on them, or we end up making the trade-off on the house, which is why planning is so important. It ensures that we don't actually have to compromise on the things that matter most to us. So we hope this was a very useful conversation for you to think about, and this is a great time for you to talk to your advisor and see how a home fits into your financial plan and how you can have your dream home and everything else too.